Hello, it's Heidi Fisher here with the Social Enterprise Online Festival, and today I'm joined by Birgit, who's going to be talking to us about partnership working and joint ventures, because she's had a lot of experience in this area. So welcome, Birgit. Could you just tell us a little bit about your background, please?
Okay, hello, I'm Birgit. I run a social enterprise called Change Kitchen. We are a catering company that caters for all sorts of events, and we get people into work through the work we deliver. We support people back to work from all sorts of labour market barriers, and including like homeless people, people with prison background, etc. Change has been going for 8 years now, and I've had several partnerships in the past. I'm in a very good one at the moment, I feel, in a joint venture that's working really well. And what else is there to tell? I think that's a good start. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you say you've had several partnerships. Do you want to just talk about the first one or the second one?
I can start.
And what happened in them?
The first one was how we started. We were we basically got funding together. I got funding together with a charity that supported homeless people, and we got funding to start Change Kitchen as a way of trying to find employment for people with basically homeless as well as addiction background. I think it's fair to say that the issue with that was that the board of the charity was maybe less entrepreneurial than some of the other people working at Change Kitchen. And so eventually we parted, official connection, but actually stayed in touch all along, and we still sometimes cook for them, and in principle we're still open to get referrals from them, which hasn't happened for a while, but in principle it's still a channel. We just catered for the goodbye meal of the CEO who was working on it, so that there's a specific link still with the charity, but as a it wasn't as a position it didn't work so well at the time. And then after that I went into a different space that was run by a big community group, and that was meant to be a partnership of sorts. That really didn't work, but I don't know if I want to talk about that. I may talk about the learning points, but not about the specifics. And then after that, I'm now in my recent, and now it's I think 2 years now, joint venture agreement I've got with a charity that does a lot of social enterprise work in Birmingham, Jericho Foundation, and that works really well, I feel. It's a good two-way relationship. It's quite open. It's helping us to grow, and I think Jericho would say they like the fact that we're smaller, more innovative, and that helps them to learn from someone else. We cook the social media, and we support them in that as well. And that's a joint venture, so it's different from with the charity. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say that the first two didn't quite work out as planned, what did you learn from going through those experiences?
I think in lots of ways the problem was that not everything had been written down about the agreement. I think it wasn't all spelled out. I think I was naive. I think probably both cases were naive. But yeah, that was probably the biggest problem, that we hadn't sort of really written it all down and agreed everything, because in some ways we didn't know. We were all the first one certainly, we were total novices to this whole thing. It was at a time when the heady days of startups and social enterprise, in 2010, when there was lots of startups and no one really knew what they're doing in that sort of way. I know of other social entrepreneurs have had similar problems. I think it's just what happened because we all really enthusiastically went into this idea and then didn't think of all the things that could go wrong, I suppose, because you don't want to if you're about enthusiastic about something new. And then yes, I think one of the things is that this idea of an entrepreneur matching up with a charity. There's an issue with charities quite often by nature initially aren't entrepreneurial. That's not how they're set up, and you can't really blame anyone for that because that's just how it is. So I think if a charity moves, and my learning point would be if a charity moves into wanting to do social enterprise alongside their charity work or as a way of raising money, then they need to really think about whether their board is ready for it. And if not, they need to either train them up or try and get some more people on the board who are. I think that's the only way to solve that issue. And as I said, I've spoken to other social entrepreneurs in similar position, and some others had to leave their charity because it didn't work. Some others maybe managed to get things changed on the board, but it is a totally different setup and thinking, and I think if it's not dealt with in the beginning, it's really hard to change it later on. That would be my advice.
Okay, so get things sorted out straight away, really, and what kind of things would you need to think about then?
Well, I think a big one obviously is finance, and
because I think most people when they go into a partnership, so what, sorting out who pays for what and how the finances are split, those kind of things.
As well, but also so our big breaking point in the end was that we needed investment to keep going. So our initial grant didn't last long enough. There wasn't enough of it to get us properly onto at least breaking even point. But we were clearly on the right track because we were having bookings and stuff, but we needed to have a bit more of a breather. So we needed to apply for some funding, and we actually managed to get it with your help, by the way, if you remember this, maybe.
A long time ago, yes.
Yeah, from Aston Investment Trust. They were called then Reinvestment Trust. And the charity just didn't want. We had to sort of give a guarantee, and one side would have been the charity giving a guarantee for I think a quarter of the loan, and their board just felt they couldn't do that. They felt they thought the risk was too high, let's put it that way, and that was the reason why we eventually parted company. But because my other two board members did trust in the company, they said, okay, let's go for the loan anyway, and let's keep going, and that's what happened. And the whole idea about whether or not you like the idea of outside investment of some sort, loans or whatever else it is, that's obviously not really in the sort of classic charity setup. They don't normally do that. So it's a different way of looking at the world, and so you need to discuss whether that is an issue. And that, I suppose the issue is whether you realize, if you are totally blue-eyed and go into this, you think, oh, well, I'd just do it, I don't need it, I'll just do it with grants. But I think that's the bit to realize that it's harder than one thinks to start things up. It takes longer generally than one thing to get to a break-even point. And then even if you have break-even point, you have issues around cash flow quite often. Whilst on paper you're making money, or at least you're breaking even, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got money in the bank always to pay what you need to pay for at the right time. So I think investment is something you always need to bear in mind of some sort, and so it might be something that you may have to look at. Thankfully, social investment is easier now since when I started. But yeah.
So
I think that was the biggest thing, yeah, the finance issue or the risk issue.
Yeah. In terms of your current partnership with Jericho, obviously there's some financial aspects to that, but there's also quite a lot of other things that they bring to the partnership as well. You want to just share some of the details of what you've got in that partnership?
Yeah, I mean, the main reason why I joined them is because they're very similar ethics to Change Kitchen in terms of, we both want to get people back to work who have sort of labour market barriers. They're a much bigger organisation. They are, compared to us, a quite big local charity, and with quite a few, I think they've got 9 social enterprises they run separately to achieve their sort of aims. And because of that, they've got a lot of sort of backroom stuff set up anyway. So they have got someone who's really good at finance. They've now got some good people for marketing. They've got their own print social enterprise, but that does the printing for the others as well. They've got vehicles, just lots of things. So probably my biggest thing, apart from the finance side, that they're doing all our finances now, the biggest thing is that we've got access to a van whenever we need it, without having to invest in one. And we generally use it at times when it's not used for Jericho, so it's not a massive issue for them to have an extra one, but it means it gets used, at sort of dead times, because we just overlap in a different way. But for us, it just made everything so much easier having a vehicle that's just there and when we need it. And the first time I had it, I don't know, I can't describe it, because we've always obviously had higher things, but it's different by just being able to have it and without the big expense of buying into one. And then, recently I've had some help with marketing. It's good to be able to chat to some of the other managers about what they're doing, just to exchange ideas. That helps. It's just that not being alone the whole time.
So is having do you get quite a lot of advice and guidance from them, or is that not something that you've really focused on with the partnerships?
No, I think it's more an exchange of ideas rather than
you don't have anyone coming to your board meetings and kind of contributing in that way?
No, not quite like that, but I've recently had to go through negotiating another contract about something, and the Jericho CEO, Richard, has had a lot with that, and also their finance team helped just to get numbers for the meeting and stuff like that, and that was really helpful. Just because then that's not my expertise, financing, and I don't enjoy it that much. So it's good to have someone who does it well and quickly, and also what I have to do. And the thing was that just not always nice having to do everything on your own, and it's good to have someone who's interested but not involved, if that makes sense. It took a really good in-between role, and they helped with the negotiations, help calm my nerves a bit, but also just generally help with the negotiations. So
Okay, sounds like you've had quite a lot of experience. So what, in terms of tips that you'd give to other social entrepreneurs that were looking at doing partnerships, what kind of things would you recommend they think about? As
I said, I think it's really important to end up with some sort of agreement that's written down, and if you can get some sort of pro bono advice and legal advice with that, that's probably a good thing, but that's more the end stage. I think before that, it's important to both sides to sit down, probably initially separately, to be really honest, to see what they want to get out of this, and also what they don't want. I think that's also really important. And I mean, we even had, I think, so I was doing a leadership course, so I had my mentor as part of that lead a meeting with all the managers at Jericho, just to go through some of the visions that we had, and that really helped share things and made it a bit more clear for everyone, why it makes sense for us to be in that joint venture. It's not actually called a partnership, and I think there's a legal thing where it's better not to call it a partnership. It's a joint venture, but on non-legal terms, yes, it's some sort of partnership. And I think, being really clear about what you want and what you don't want, and being honest about it. I mean, honesty, I think, is really important for those relationships anyway. It's obviously, I mean, my thing always was I was the smaller partner always with something bigger, because it was, bigger organizations. So I suppose I had to learn to be more confident about what I bring to it, and then that takes time. You can't really, that's a hard one, but it is also really important, because generally you will bring something, but you need to, you need to learn what that is, and you need to be able to share what that is as well, to sell yourself, so to say. I think that matters as well. I think it is important to try and find some reciprocity in an obvious way, because anything works better if it's reciprocal. So yeah, that's another thing that's important to bear in mind. It's worth speaking to other people who've been through the process as well, rather than just jumping in it feet first without finding out more about it. I probably would say meet the board of the other organization properly. I quite like, in principle, the idea that each other have a person on each other's board. We don't do that at the moment, but I think it's something that I've considered in other places, and I think it probably is a good idea. It's not always that easy, but it's worth bearing in mind.
Okay.
It's probably the most important bit.
So I think the only other thing that I'd like to ask is, how easy is it to get out of a partnership? And
I think it depends what it is. The first one was in principle easy, because they left. They just left the idea, and then we just had to say, okay, we'll keep on going anyway. You should always have a clause in whatever agreement you're going to have that is about what happens if it doesn't work anymore. As I understand it, in a joint venture agreement, it's not that hard to get out of. That is an advantage and a disadvantage, like anything, because obviously if you want the other person to do it, then that means they can leave you high and dry as well. I think that's why the reciprocity is so important. I think you just got to work together. That joint venture agreement is all about making sure both sides want to be in it, and as long as you can achieve that, then you're going to stay. And obviously, if you can't achieve anymore, then dissolve. And I think that's the simple version of that. It's obviously a bit more complicated legally, but yeah. And again, get some legal advice with what's the best thing about that. But get out the horses are really important for any of this. Yeah, it's important. And think about how long you want to be given notice, and how long you feel you need. It's not always that easy to exactly establish it, but just be really serious about it when you think about it.
Okay. And would you suggest to people that they spend a bit of time like testing the partnership or the joint venture before they sign the agreement? So do a few things together, or would you
that's probably a good idea.
Have covered it in terms of the discussions, and you just sign the paperwork and get on with it?
Yeah. No, I think it is a good idea to test it a bit, if you can find a way of doing that in a sort of secure way. Because some things only really become obvious, some things you do or don't like only become obvious once you sort of know, especially if you're the social entrepreneur, the smaller organization, and then you're moving into a bigger one, or moving in with a bigger one, or alongside with, whatever exact word is. It's really important to find out about the culture, the actual culture, rather than one that's perceived or portrayed. So you need to sort of meet lots of people in the place. You need to have had lunch with people. You know, that matters. Especially, again, as a small organization, obviously affects you more how other people are around you if you don't have much to absorb it. So yeah, I think some sort of test phase is a good idea.
Okay, brilliant. So lots of really helpful tips there, Birgit. It's been really good to talk to you. I'm glad you could join us today, and it's been interesting to hear about your journey and your experiences, the positive and negative sides to it. But it sounds as if you've got a really good joint venture at the moment, and perhaps the process of going through those other partnerships has enabled you to get to the point where you now have a really successful joint venture, because you've learned a lot along the way.